Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Guido Picciocchi. Hello everybody, I'm Dr. Guido Picciocchi, Minek Knight from Italy, and I would love to talk to you today how to deal when we have a difficult aesthetic case like the one shown with a natural tooth and an implant with the prosthetic part. As I told you, I come from Italy, and those are some macaroni and some tomato. And on that, you will see all the prosthetic components of the enriched implant. This is where I would love to fix my intention today. In this case, the patient came with a vertical fracture. So, because it was a vertical fracture, we had to extract the root. He was a goalkeeper, and he had this fracture during an injury in a game. As we see, we have a confirmation of the verticality, so we can perform a root membrane technique that today is the gold standard of the aesthetic, and to find some other different kind of solution. So here is the extraction in the movie, and when we drill, we have to take some consideration. The first kind of consideration that I would love to focus on are the horizontal consideration. What does it mean? That we know from literature that if we don't have 2 millimeters of buccal bone, we will not have a long-term residence. So 2 is the number that you need to have a long-term aesthetic. And as you see, we placed the implant very far with the neck from the bone. So doing some consideration about the contraction, even if we do a packaging, having the extraction of the root, we try to have more than 2. And when we place the fixture, we do other kind of consideration. The other kind of consideration that we do are vertical. What does it mean? That we have to deal with different kind of connection when we talk about implant. That can be external hexagon, internal hexagon, or conical connection. Conical connection, like enrich, have a friction that make a tight seal that is proven, again, by literature, that is the best in the term of bone maintaining. And as Zebris told us, when we have horizontal forces, we can have a bending of the abutment in internal hexagon, but we don't have this effect when we talk about the conical. That's why if we use an internal and external X, we can have some resorption in the time because of this pumping effect and the bacteria that goes inside this gap inside this, and they are pumped down to the bone crest. But thanks to the conical connection, we can put the implant down crestally, so 1-2 millimeters subcrestal, not having any kind of recession. And what mean to place an implant down crestal? Mean that, as you see in the right of the slide, we have more buccal bone because the bone is most of the time oblique, not horizontal, and we are not in the cortical one, we are in the cancellum, so we have less compression, and that means, again, especially in the mandibula, less resorption. So we placed our implant in that vertical position, taking consideration also by the CJ position of the natural tooth for papilla maintaining. I used the temporary he came with because it was an emergency. He was sent to my clinic by another doctor for that, for a prosthetic guide, because we could not claim a guided surgery. And I decided not to load, but just to pack with some bone grafting and no connective tissue grafting because of his career. Because he couldn't stay with once in the palate too long. He didn't want to, and I didn't want to load because I was very scared about another trauma if I performed an immediate load. So I did an innovative pointed, so I transformed the temporary in, we can say, a Maryland. And this ovation has been designed with the height, as you see, of the zenith that is lower in the implant than in the tooth. So we need some extra packing with the graft, and I wanted to have more tissue in order to compress it and to be sure in the healing. And so this is the immediate placement of the Maryland in the mouth. This is the outcome at 4 months, and this is at 6 months. It's very impressive because we are ready to impress it. The architecture, it's amazing. And usually when we talk about other kind of connection, we need to raise the flap, to open everything, to put a kneeling abutment, to put a temporary, to wait, and make many appointments. But thanks to the conical connection, the approach changed. Why? Because I usually perform in this situation immediately a small hole inside the bone on the microscope with a small bore, and I have no problem because here I don't have any connection that is a sealing connection. The sealing is inside, so even if I do some damage over this cap, there are no problem. And here is the X-ray of control, just to be sure that everything is seated correctly and that I did enough bone reduction to put my prosthetic device inside the fixture. So now the question that we give is, can we load? Because when we place the implant, we have the torque. There are some data that give us a reference if we can load or not. But when the implant is healed, this reference is off. So we need the other kind of data. And those data are given screwing what we call a small peg inside the enriched implants, and by another device that is the MAG-ISC, is an hostel that do a calculation of the bone density around the implant with some number. If the number is up to 72, we know that we can load the implant when it's single. So we place a gold pin if it's an enrich, red one if it's an any one. In this case, it's an enrich, so a gold one inside the mouth. We do our calculation in using which technique. It's very important that the points of the MAG-ISC is not in contact, the tip is not in contact with the small peg, because or we will have false number. The tip should be always a bit far away from the small peg, and we have to take 5 different kind of calculation, different angulation of the small peg. Why? Because in this situation we are having information by the vestibular part of the implant, because the tip is lingual. So this is just one part of the density, of the 3/600 density of the implant, of the bone around the implant. And that's why we suggest to take not less than 5 measurements with what we call the Voldemort technique for the Harry Potter 5. That means vestibular, occlusal, lingual, distal, and mesial. And if we talk about the upper arch for sure, we talk about palate. It takes just 1 minute. So if the number is up to 72, we are ready to take our impression. Now, as we said, we have different kind of technique of impression. If we talk about analogic impression, so the old style, we have 2 different ways to act. The first one is the open tray. The open tray means that we use 2 kinds of transfer, one for the multi-unit abutment and one for the regular implants. And this transfer, as you see, is very long. If you see the black line is much more long than the tooth. Why? Because the tray is open, have a hole in itself, and we should be able to unscrew the transfer inside the impression material. So this transfer is usually very, very long. And as you see, I placed also some flowable around the transfer. Why? those flowable composite allow me to have less contraction of those amazing architecture that we built in the time, in the past month. So I don't want to lose it, and I block it, putting some flowable composite around the open tray transfer.
We usually use what we call a transfer, which should be locked into the implant and screwed to the ends. For a good impression, we need no rotation of them and no contraction of the material. Don't forget to take an X-ray for control. Now we can take the tray, put the material in, and fix the transfer in that. Once it's totally blocked in that, we screw the analog in the transfer. Then the analog is surrounded of chalk.
And we have what we call the working model in the analog way. It's very important that if you work with polyether, it's not you that you screw the analog inside with the transfer, but that you wait not less than 24-48 hours to let the impression material to complete his polymerization. So it should be screwed in the lab after 1-2 days. And as I showed you, we need to take an X-ray for control. It's very important, and we see that here in multiple implant case healed after a post-X insertion, where I put multiple open tray transfer, and when we do the X-ray of control, what we see that 2 of them are not correctly seated. That means that even if the impression is technically perfect, we have a false. We have a false and the structure is not correct. So it's very important that every time we take an impression to take an X-ray of control with a transfer screwed in the mouth. The second technique that we talk about is the closed tray. What does it mean? That we use another kind of transfer. This transfer is shorter. This is a post-X implant. And as you see, the transfer is shorter than the tooth because we need to use a closed tray. So a tray that don't have holes. In those cases, I used to put some collagen matrix before the impression to avoid any contraction, but also materials that can go inside my implant sites. We put for sure some rubber around it if we talk about an immediate impression. And we just put the light body over that and the tray in the mouth. We wait for the end of the polymerization of the material. We remove the tray, and then we have to unscrew the transfer from the mouth and to reposition the transfer inside the tray. Even here is not you, but it's better that the lab do the repositioning to wait the 24-48 hours of ending of the polymerization of the material itself. And then I prefer to do the packaging of the grafting, of the bone grafting after the impression, not to have any infection of the graft by the impression material, and we close easily with some collagen matrix with the 8th suture that is an X modified around the healing button. And here, talking about analog, it's very important that we change the analog. We don't use the same more than 2-3 times. Why? Because as you see, during the procedure in the lab, there are distortion and there are also erosion of it. So that means that we can have some imperfection in the position in the hexagon if we use analog that are used more than 2-3 times. Sometimes they are used for, I know my colleague, 10-15 times. It is really too much if we talk about conical connection. And as we said, we produce a working model with the crown that are ready to be screwed in the mouth. But what happens if we change the technique and we talk about scanner? Because I have to say that today 100% of my practice is on scanning. I don't take analogic impression anymore. We replace the transfer with the scan body, and I will show you another movie that will teach you how to take an impression on a single implant if we talk about digital impression. So if we talk about intraoral scan.
When we use a dental scanner, the same of the transfer is the scan body. A scan body is a plastic device that has some mark. Those marks should stay vestibulary. In this position, the scanning will be easier. As the transfer, we lock and screw it, and we take an X-ray for control.
Even here.
This was one of our first case. The mark is not vestibular, but this don't mean that change the quality of the impression. It's just a convention. We start to scan with the healing abutment or the temporary in the mouth. Then we cut the healing abutment in the scanning with the cut function. We remove the healing abutment or the temporary from the mouth. And we go immediately to scan the transmucosal sides.
Very quick.
This trick is done to avoid the contraction of it, that we know that is very fast. And now we select the scan body function. First of all, we will need to cut inside the hole of the transmucosal side to clean it.
Better all the time.
Then we press the scan body button. We place the scan body in the mouth with the mark vestibular.
X-ray.
And lights on.
Different angulation. Be more precise.
The software will merge two files, one with the transmucosal side and one with the scan body. Plus, we can have an option to see the mesh. The more is clean and full of triangle the image, the more will be precise. Talking about literature, there is a study in vitro on the scan body that show that on a single implant we can have a detail from 14 to 31 micron. That's good enough.
And 14 is really good. It's not good enough. It's really good because if we talk about analogic impression, we have to do calculation about what? Contraction of the impression material and expansion of the chalk. So even if we splint in the open tray technique the transfer, we can have contraction in the splinting. So that 14 microns are really a good number. We can say that scanners today are really precise. So this is what we did. We performed a scanning in this case, and we had as a result an STL file that we can send to everybody just with an email. You don't need to deliver anymore your impression material, your occlusion, but you just send an email wherever you want in the world, and that's really important for me because I can work with quality with the technician at either side and in a really fast way. It's even easier to communicate. And with the scanner, we don't just take an impression. We can also check immediately if the occlusion that we register is good because we have option with the color in the contact point that give us a pattern of occlusion. If this pattern is stronger in a side than the other, means that this occlusion is not correct. So we can go back and just rescan immediately. So the strong point of scanner, in my opinion, is that we can check immediately and we can rescan and correct. But the most amazing feature, in my personal point of view, is that we can do an immediate calculation with the ruler tool between the prepared tooth and the antagonist. And this is what means that we can choose the correct material. And third, we can see also by the mesh viewing if there are some imprecision. It's not like I send the impression and then they tell me that it is not effective, or I take the impression and then there is a rotation of the transfer in that. We just see immediately that where there are some green zone, we need to rescan. So we just go back and we do some extra scanning that take just a few seconds. And when we send this to the lab, we can do the same consideration that we did before. But what is important? It's important to know how many space we need, because we have different techniques that we can use to perform a crown. We can use some porcelain over metal, like in the left, some Fespatic over zirconia, like the second, some full palatal shield of zirconia with a veneer vestibular, like in the third, or some monolithic zirconia. What is the difference? As you see, Fespatic ceramic have just 90 megapascal of compressive strength. When zirconia HTML, so is not the cubic but the tetragonal, have 1,200 megapascal of compression strength. Means that the zirconia, when it's HTML, is 10 times stronger against the chipping than the Fespatic. And that means that she requests even less space, because if we consider this kind of technique, we need not less than 2 millimeters. But we saw by the scanning that we are just 1.5. And so we will not be able to do this kind of crown. We have to prep more, but the preparation was already short. So we can just change the technique and do something like this, a full palatal sheet of zirconia, because we are in a static zone and we don't want a monolithic. And we need just 0.6, 0.7 of millimeters to perform. And we do vestibular layering after a cutback to have a much more aesthetic. So I sent my STL file to the technician Daniele Rondoni. He sent me back an email of control, and the amazing stuff, I think, is that we can go on the laptop team viewing and decide together the aesthetic shape of the final outcome and of the cutback, but we can go even with the software to design a nest line doing a precise calculation of the thickness of the zirconia around the abutment. And why the S-line is so important? Because we have different designs. We talk about implant with hexagon or with conical connection. The hexagon had a convex design, the tulip one. The conical have a concave design and what we call an S-line. And what is the difference? The difference has been shown by a good friend of me and one of the most clever professionals that I met in my life, that is Davide Farronato, that produced this amazing paper that showed us that the ratio of tissue around a conical connection with the nest line is 1.1 instead of 1.1.5. So it's closer to the natural tooth and we have much more tissue around the conical connection. The tissue means that is the issue that we need for the long-term result and for the height of the papilla, if we talk about anesthetics. And if we don't have a root membrane technique that give us data that are closer to the natural tooth than to the implant, because we save all the periodontal structure, that is the structure of a tooth and not the structure of an implant. So what we receive from the lab is some mill zirconia already colored and is free of model, because if we talk about monolithic or cutback, we are free of models, so there are no models produced. We just screw that in the mouth, and we need to link an abutment that is not a T-base, but with Megagen is a Zirgen. And what is a Zirgen? A Zirgen is a titanium base that have different height of the cuff. Why? Because the cuff should stay every day 2 millimeters far from the bone. That means that if we talk about conical, we can go subcrestally 1-2 millimeters. So if we are 1 millimeter subcrestal, we need to stay 2 millimeters up to the crest. We need a 3 millimeters of cuffs. So we do an easy calculation. 2 plus the millimeters we have subcrestal. And as you see, this Zirgen is linked in the lab and is already polished by the cement. So we screw it in this appointment, and we can see that it's perfect in color. It's already done almost, because it's a colored zirconia. The shape is nice. Our zenithal are good, and the papilla is almost closed. So we say to the technician that is okay, our trying is good, and the technician he go on. And if we talk about this kind of technique of microlayer himself, he will produce a working model, because the trying was good. Hey, we go on painting the ceramic over the cup. And as you see, the final outcome is amazing. Because tooth and implant, they look almost the same. The color integration is super. The papilla is close. And the biological integration, talking about a case like this, is really, really high level. If we consider also the X-ray to do X-ray of control, both the natural tooth and the implant are okay as precision. That means the scanner today are precise for the impression over implant, and are precise over natural tooth as well. But what I love the most is, as I told you, is the soft tissue integration, because on this view, having just a bone grafting and not a connective tissue grafting, not having a part of the root to perform the root membrane technique, what is impressive is the stability and is the complex between the implant and the natural tooth that look almost the same. And why? This is because of the conical connection, is because of the S-line design, is because the over packing of the bone graft. Everything was very simple, and when things are simple and they work, mean that everything is working really in a perfect way. So this is thanks to the system that give us simple but high efficiently and high performing solution. I hope that this webinar was useful for you. So if you are interested in more information about digital world and you want to see small tips about scanners, please visit my personal website www.guidopicciocchi.com. And for other webinars like this of my dear Maniac friends, please visit imagazine.com. I suggest you to visit this website, because you will see some other high professional webinar from dear friends, but most of us estimated colleagues that I really miss a lot in those days. So I hug you all. I hug you all, Minek friends. I hug you all, you user. And I hope to see you soon in the next event that we will do with the Magazine. Thank you a lot for your attention, and stay strong and stay updated.